kink, care, community, and the conversations we wish we had sooner. The Four Femmes podcast brings together the four femme voices of Magnolia, Bliss, Zoe, and Kim to explore embodiment, relationships, kink, and sensual liberation.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Four Femmes podcast. We're kink, care, and community, consent first, and curiosity always. The Four Femmes podcast features femme-centered conversations and storytelling on exploration and somatic or body-centered liberation. This space is built as a vehicle for ethical education, authentic expression, and as a resource for community. This is an educational podcast. We believe we learn through experience, and we're here to share our experiences, also by giving femmes the mic. My name's Magnolia. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a femme Gen X explorer drawn to kink, alternative relationships, art, and conversations that center femme perspectives. I've been an active member in the scene for over a decade, and I've also organized and led community groups during that time. This is our first actual recording of a group podcast today, so welcome. Thank you for the empty space for letting us use their beautiful rope studio as a recording space. And we're going to introduce ourselves. Oh, would you like to read yours?
Yes. I'm Kim. I'm a creative twisted dominant, a millennial, a mom, and also a Cancer. I love using my imagination to be consensually mean to people. And I believe that education, community, and mentorship are the best tools to achieve those goals.
I'm Bliss. I am a poly black queer gal, and I like to ask all the questions that you're thinking, and I like to facilitate spaces where we storytell, because I believe that is how we learn.
Mm-hmm. I'm Zoe Kate. I'm a 30-something, non-binary, polyqueer who is here to learn and talk about anything that challenges the norm when it comes to romantic relationships and BDSM lifestyles. I've been in the BDSM and non-monogamy lifestyle for over 10 years, and I'm still doing it. Alongside my 3 play partners, I will chat the good, the bad, and all the messy bits in between, what it's like leading a life of debauchery.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So I feel like if we are going to start organically, especially because we've been talking about this for a long time, but not everybody else knows that we've been talking about it for a long time. So Magnolia, I would love for you to chat a little bit about how you came up with the thought and the idea of this, and we can talk about how we initiated and started it.
I know, right? Technically, my first thought about this actually came in a dream. I've been wanting to do a kink-centered podcast or educational group on a national level for a long time. I actually tried to start some type of podcast in 2017, and unfortunately was kind of talked out of it. So apparently it just wasn't the right space or time. But now there's such a need for conversations to be had from a femme perspective. So here we are. But yes, it did come to me in a dream. Even the name came to me in a dream as well. And that's why that's how it started. And I just was at an open rope and was like, hey, Bliss, I have this idea. And Bliss was like, we're doing it. So thank y'all, all of y'all, for supporting this dream that I had. So that's really where it started.
So with us kind of talking about this being an educational space for femmes, I think it's good for people to understand what we want to come out of this podcast and what space we would like for it to take up, and kind of segue into how we feel we can be responsible for that space through telling y'all a little bit more about us.
I don't even know where to start. I guess I feel like I just want to bring whatever perspective is helpful. I'm just kind of over. I'm over dudes taking up all of the educational podcast space. I feel like I live so alternatively that it's just I don't know, it's just time to like start like sharing about it, you know, at the bare minimum. Like, I would like to reach those people that feel like they're like alone and that feel very isolated in whatever that is, whether they like found out they like have a real niche fetish that they love, or maybe in some kind of like gender identity, like, you know, I'm not sure. I feel like that's one of my motivations of being here, and at least telling my stories and what I've been doing.
For me, this podcast, my hope is that I can connect with as many people about a realistic view of what a lot of things look like.
Yes.
Because I remember first starting out having like nobody to kind of like bounce like, hey, does this sound normal? Is this right?
Yeah.
Or if I do this, like, what does it look like if it's going wrong? And then also, because, you know, so much of like what I was exposed to was either porn, you know, the BDSM like 2-minute clip from a movie or something, and then none of it was actually like what it looks like when you try to attempt it in real life. So my hope is that through this podcast, people will feel less alone and a little less afraid to try things because they can hear this is what it looks like from a realistic perspective. That's my hope.
Yeah.
I just want to add one thing too of a purpose for me is to really have that informed consent conversation, because a lot of things that we do is a lot of trial and error, and for us to have our 10 years plus experience, you know, to have that storytelling, be like, this is where I went wrong. And then the people that are listening can be like, oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. And then they can make a more informed choice about how they start or continue their kink journey as well. So
Yeah, I feel like that is a big piece that I hope for this space is to give exposure and to create normalcy around a lot of the topics that we're going to talk about that I feel like become mainstream either for the wrong reasons or become mainstream with like not necessarily an accurate message. And for me, I feel like I'm a part of so many different worlds, and that the underlying understanding of intimacy, of like possibly being kinky or into fetishes, of living an alternative relationship style is very prevalent, and no one tends to talk about it. And it's always my hope to merge all of these worlds, especially being someone who works a lot with like families and with parents, and it being somewhat of like a non-conversation for people to talk about sex and sexuality, even though we're willing to talk about all of the aftermath, consequences, and results of having sex and being intimate with each other. So it's my hope to like create normalcy and merge these things, because people often have difficulty having the conversations because they haven't been exposed to the conversations. They haven't been exposed to language, and they're not sure about storytelling or about what feels okay or what feels legal or what feels what is accessible to them. So it's my hope to understand that this is like this is a life conversation, and that everyone should be having it, and it doesn't need to be taboo.
who is this podcast for, and who might it not be for? I think this podcast is for anyone that is interested in exploring any of the topics that we're talking about. Also, if you don't already have community, or if you're looking for community to have conversations as well, I think that's for people. We do have a lot of people that come to the national cons that they don't have anything in their cities, where they're literally the only person that is into whatever it is. So, having conversations for those people that don't have access to education or don't have access to community, for them to also feel less alone in these thoughts and explorations. Who is it not for? People who are one true anything.
Yeah. Anyone who's like, there's a one true way of anything, this is not for you.
Yeah.
Like, this is a conversation piece.
Yeah.
It's gonna go a lot of the different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I think that even opens the door to the understanding that like we don't expect for everyone listening to always agree with us. We also
Correct.
don't expect that we're always going to agree with each other, and that's not really what it's about. It's not meant to be like an echo chamber. It's really just the fact that I feel like we very, very often sit around and have these conversations in communities with other people or in smaller community spaces in which we're always talking about how they need to be brought to a bigger stage. So I think even in the last like handful of months of development of this and us talking about it in the communities that we're in, people being excited about the fact that these conversations don't just have to happen in these like quiet, dark, small rooms.
Yeah.
I mean, this is for everybody, because even if this is not necessarily your perspective, you should be aware. Because a lot of times, like, even if, this is a For Femmes podcast, but if you're a masked person and you play with femme people, you should also be aware of what things can come up from their perspective. So just because you don't identify with, something that's going on with the topic of the episode or with like one of us, you should still be exposed to the ideas.
But that then segues us into what conversations are y'all excited to have in this space and on this podcast?
I'm excited to talk with other rope bottoms and people who love rope from a movement standpoint, and to get all the experiences down. So that's just one of the tiny things.
Yeah, I feel like it's like hard to like generalize, I guess, because it's like
You don't have to be general. You can literally
like okay, I will get so niche then. I'm looking forward to like talking about like exploration and like what exploration looks like, especially like after being in the scene for so long. Like my fetishes, like I feel like they are getting nicher and nicher and nicher, and like I literally discovered last week, right, that like I love to trample men. I love it. Like I live for it. However, like within trampling alone, there's even like subsects of fetishes, and like I played with someone who likes the walkover, is what we call it, and it's literally they just like to be walked on. I like to be meaner. I want to watch the breath leave their body. Like, I want to jump on them. I want to stomp on them. I want to run up and then jump on them. Like, I want to use my whole body weight. I like to do it barefoot in heels. And I also, with a select few, will do it in metal soccer cleats. So, like, that's like, I'm looking forward to getting into, like, the niche of the niche of the niche of these kinds of play. And that's one play of mine that I personally like. And yeah, I just want to talk about, like, those experiences and, like, kind of, and I guess, and what it's like. Yeah. And I don't even know.
What it's like. I love that. I am excited to have a lot of conversations on here. I feel like I've been thinking a lot about the general episodes that I plan on recording and people I plan on interviewing. One, I love the perspective of just interviewing people in general. And I also like being able to use storytelling as a mode of teaching. I feel like as someone who has been in like an educator space for both like teenagers, adults, children, like for a lot of years, I find that, there's a lot of beautiful like pedagogy and like different like perspectives on how you want to translate information. But one that's like the tale as old as time is storytelling and like oral tradition and being able to be exposed to things. And I talk about it all of the time when it comes to like other work that I do and even familial work that I do, where it's like we learn from observing as young children and nobody observes anything anymore. We barely observe intimacy. Like it's very cultural here in America to also like have children who are like, ew, gross, my parents are kissing, let alone like being able to have actual sex education with children. And so then we get to adulthood and we start talking about teaching and educating adults, and there are so many adults who are like, I don't even have the language to have a talk with my partner about something I might want to try. And so I feel like I'm excited to have these, I'm excited to just have these conversations where it doesn't even feel like the expectation of like forming curriculum and things of that nature, like I do, in the studio, or like when we travel and teach. It's more of just like sharing experiences and asking people questions, and also accepting questions and being able to answer it, and keeping it very like, casual as we usually do, but exposing it to people and having it be educational, just truly in the nature of sharing things. And that is something I'm very excited to do.
I think this is a good platform for one of the things that I really like, which is weaponizing femininity. Especially as a female dominant, you have a very interesting journey with identifying as female and really presenting female when you are also trying to take charge, especially over cis men. And at some point in your journey, you have a disconnection from that femininity because masculinity tends to be seen as stronger. So you try to, not necessarily identify as masc, but you start trying to like take on masc traits to be seen as more strong. And then at some point, it becomes too much, and you're like, I gotta be me. So then you have a whole swing back to like, if this is who you are, this is how you present. And then at some point you have this like level up of like, and now I can use that to make other people feel bad about themselves. So it's, God, and I really, really would like to interview. We'll see who would be willing to come on and interview with me. But the whole kink of cross-dressing and sissification and humiliation, specifically about potentially being degraded for things that are viewed as feminine.
Yes.
And like the whole complicated idea of like, of what's essentially behind that and why people feel the way they do when they explore that kink. But again, the few people who I've like, hey, would you like to come interview?
No,
they're like,
it's really shameful.
but they're like, oh, is it video? And I went,
they don't want it.
And they're like, then no, because if it was audio, then they can kind of, they're a voice.
It's easier to mask, and we can blur people out, but like I don't know, with technology, like can people unblur people now?
Or just give them a mask.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of different ways that people can
protect
their
femininity. No,
Yeah.
for sure. But no, with sissification specifically, that's a really unique one because I also don't know what is the opposite that is like massification. Like sissification is like kind of exists on its own, and there's no like equal parallel to it, which is
because of our culture.
Exactly.
It's never insulting to be masculine. It's insulting to be
Exactly.
feminine.
And that's why sissification is this fetishization of this. And so I completely agree. But it will be hard to like, with some of the topics that we'll talk about, there is going to be this level of shame. Like,
well, that brings me into my next question is like, what feels vulnerable to talk about even what feels vulnerable about starting this podcast in general, and by doing this on like a platform that everybody's going to see.
I mean, for me, I kind of, I'm fine with people knowing whatever about me. I'm actually very okay hearing feedback and criticism about like who I am. It's one of those things where of me, especially with video, like putting myself out there in a much more public way than even now of this could potentially blow back on vanilla people who I know and love and who are not also out or open as I am, who want to be about like this, this is potentially what I do. Especially as a mom, I'm not dumb into thinking that like potentially my children's friends, when they get older, will find these. Yeah. And it's one of those things where I don't want that to blow back on them, but also my goal is to, at least if they find it, I want it to still be quality and they learn something from it, as opposed to just potentially something that could embarrass like vanilla people who are close to me. But that is a risk that I'm taking, and I know that I'm also kind of taking it for them too. Yeah. And so that is scary as shit for me. I mean, if people want to know all the weird, stupid shit I do to play partners, that's fine.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's so valid, and it's true to even think about it into the future in general. You know what I mean? It's like nobody knows where they're going to be in 10 years. And what I can say is that I feel like what we've all talked about, even when we were starting this, as agreements that we wanted to make, and also weighing out fears that we might have, was that we wanted it to be educational all the time. I think that it's interesting to think about the vulnerabilities of like being exposed and having it be online forever, and thinking about the future of like who could find it, why. I've already had some of that blowback, even just like in the world of just vanilla stuff and my vanilla job, and people who think that I'm insulted by being outed when really, like, I'm not at all. Like, I'm very open. Also, these people literally knew nothing about me. They just knew that I had some sort of connection to a kinky space or to kinky people or to fetishes, and thought that it was like dangerous because these are, you know, they're people of their own state of repression who are like afraid to talk about sexuality in any way. And thankfully, like, it didn't really matter to me because I'm out, and I just, even though I don't advertise myself on the internet, like, I am an open book. But also they didn't understand that like this is a career of mine, and I've been teaching about this for a long time. And that it's a huge staple of everything that I do in advocacy and in work that is still related to like birth and families and family structures. And so I've already had it blow back on me. I've already had people try to find things online about classes I was teaching and send it to clients that I had, and, you know, asking them if they knew what I did. Like, I have had all of that stuff happen, and thankfully I've already built myself into a place where everybody's like, yeah, we know exactly who this person is. We actually probably hired her because of these things. And I'm grateful that I have a career that I can dictate in that way. And at the end of the day, I only really want those people finding me anyway. But it is my hope that in culture in general, we understand that these are not things to necessarily hide. You don't have to advertise them. You don't have to be out. We still live in the world, and people are judgmental, but that, like, I don't understand living in a society where we understand that sex sells all the time, and that we lead with it in advertising, marketing, television, and all media, but yet we can't speak about it. And we're also living under a regime in our country that wants to promote every result of having like sex. So I find it very strange, and I don't necessarily have fear, but there's a lot of vulnerability of just everything I ever put on the internet ever. I have to ask myself, like, what if who finds it at any given time in 10 or 15 years? And this is me stepping into a place where it's like my image and my voice is going to be educating, but also probably sharing things about myself that I hope it goes towards exposure and education when people didn't have it, instead of people with really shitty attitudes that might want to try to interfere with our lives in any negative way.
It's where, you know, for me personally, I kind of like, I hope this podcast ends up with the people who it's really supposed to end up with, and people who will learn from it. There's also a little part of me being like, please, for the love of God, like, don't let this go super famous. Like, please don't let me be super famous.
I'm like, please don't let me
but
be
also,
featured on
like,
anything.
You know, but again, you know, then there's that fun femme part of me, which is being like, it's never going to be famous. You're not good enough. It's like, okay, this is fun. This is a fun journey. 3 a.m.
Self-limiting thoughts and fear at the same time.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So, what do we feel like then is missing from the conversations that we have exposure to now? Because obviously we know that we have not come up with like a brand new idea. We've also all, I feel like at this point, been featured on other people's podcasts. Over the last handful of years. We've also been a part of panels. We go and teach at conferences. We also facilitate things in our community regularly. So like, what do we think is missing that we're hoping to have here in the space?
Just having people that actually do the lifestyle. Like, I'm sick of people interviewing me that already have a platform and are like making money off of my life. But they don't go through the stigma that we just talked about. They don't go through the shame. They don't go through any of that. They don't go through the blowback, you know, but here they are still making money off of like my back. And they don't even like give back to like my community. You know, they're not donating to places like Pineapple Sex Work, places like this, you know, places that just like provide educational resources, Shibari study, anyone who's teaching a consent class, like, and just any person that like actively teaches like a consent and an education, like, I like, because every time I've even talked to like my friends about like this podcast that I'm starting, they're like, oh, haven't you listened to like this person? Haven't you listened to that person? You know, like call her daddy, you know? And I'm like, I'm like, but is she a lifestyler?
Yeah.
Is she you know, what's her exploration? And like, and I don't want to like throw shame or anything, because I do think that's a wonderful podcast. Not that I've listened to it that much, but it's like, for me, it's one of those, like, you're interviewing us because sex sells. Mm-hmm. And, like, you know, and yeah, and so it's one of those, like, I want to hear from people that are, like, actually living it, actually, like, trying to do it. I want to hear from the people that feel stigmatized. I want to hear from the people that have, like, have suffered, like, because of that, mm-hmm. you know? Because yeah, I feel like a lot of people that actively take up this space are interviewing us because we lead such interesting lives. And I'm like, just because you decide to oppress yourself and like, and or you've chosen monogamy that maybe 10 years you're like, how did I marry this person? Like, you know, it should like, I wish that all of those like podcast hosts would like work with our community and then donate to it. Like, I'm just, you know, like, I'm glad you got to buy a BMW after interviewing me. I'm glad that you get to live luxuriously, because like, you know, when I was a sex worker, I didn't have access to healthcare. I didn't have, you know, when I wasn't making money, like, you know, my parents didn't know what I was doing. Like, I just had to tell them that, like, I had a real job and that I'm just actually bad with money. Mm-hmm. So, and that's, like, a weird double shame of, like, well, I can't tell you exactly what I'm doing, but I still have to tell you that, like, I'm fucking up because I'm just, like, I'm having to move back in, or I'm having to, you know, and so, and that's a unique experience to somebody in my lifestyle where, like, I have to go through this stigma of like when I was like doing sex work, and then I also have to go through a stigma of like still having a family and like wanting to be able to be like honest with them about kind of something that's going on, or like, you know, because I'm sitting there complaining about how I can't make bills, and my mom's just like, but you have such a good job, and I'm like, yeah, allegedly. Yeah, you know, like, yeah, from what you know, because like, because I can't tell you that men pay for my foot sweat. I can't tell you, you know, I can't tell you about, you know, that and all the troubles with that, and also because like, people think that like, oh, I can just start an OnlyFans. I can just sell my socks. I'm like, okay, do the logistics of having any kind of mail subscription, right? Like, do the logistics of like the shipping and also do the logistics of like, where are you going to drop it off at? Where are you going to, you know, like, what's the return address that you're going to use, you know? Because like, if you're somebody that's going to use your home address, like, like the safety stuff. And so, yeah, there you go. There's my little soapbox.
You would like people who are actually doing the thing to be the people talking about it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the everyday community conversations that happen here that, you know, the general public is not privy to. Mm-hmm. But they're very important, nuanced conversations that happen every day at lunchtime, you know, or that conversation that happens after a scene has gone bad. What does that conversation look like, you know? Or either it didn't meet expectations, or there was an injury, or there was a consent issue. We need to have the other end of the conversation, you know? Because especially if you're watching things like, oh my God, that was so fantastic, but then they're not privy to the personal conversation that happened afterwards. Like, yes, I looked really pretty, but you know, I told you before my ankle was hurting really bad, and then you put my foot in an ankle cuff. Like, we need to have that conversation. Did you forget? Like, or were you trying to hurt me more? Or, you know, those nuanced everyday post-scene or before-scene negotiations and stuff like that the general public is not privy to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that same right, I feel like when I teach classes here, and I kind of joke with people about, you know, talking about like consent and skills with consent and language around consent, as well as a skill set of understanding when you're touching someone or things that don't belong to you, like how to navigate that. Mm-hmm. And when people like will ask me questions or seem confused confused or try to compare it to something like out in the world, I always make a joke like, these are not kink problems or kink questions. These are human problems and human questions. Like
absolutely.
consent and negotiation is not like this is not a kink thing. Like this is like a life thing. And so I feel like I want to expose, especially people who are not in like even just adult sex education spaces or kink spaces in general. I want to expose them to how much we talk about that here.
Yeah.
Because it's not until I see people come to their first play party, or I see people come to like their first lab here, or just be in a space with kinky people and they're like, oh wow, like consent is just like the culture here. Like people ask before they hug me, and I didn't even realize that that was a thing that like didn't happen out in the real world. Or even the fact that like I always can spot the clinicians like in the kink space, which I love. I can always spot the other clinicians because like they will very much be like, they're great at narrating, like, I'm going to touch you here, or like, is it okay if I touch you here? Or before they touch anyone in any type of strange way, they will like initiate a very random touch that like, just to see how you react to it, of like, you're going to see me touch your knee first. Or like, you know, they're very good at initiating consensual touch with people. And it's usually people who have some sort of ethics around being a clinician and having to touch people in their everyday vanilla life.
Right.
And seeing them translate that, I'm like, yes, this is how we should be everywhere. So once again, it's like, I'm excited about filling the gap between like this vanilla world and this kink world, and understanding that they're the same worlds.
Yeah.
Like you would be shocked at how many times I go into clients' house and like we're talking about how their husbands want to try their breast milk, and I'm like, there's an entire community of people like this. Like, you know what I mean? Not that you have to be that person. This could be just like a funny thing you're doing with your wife.
Weird,
but it's not as weird as you think that it is. And also, you can totally go onto Reddit and find a whole forum of people who are talking about trying their wife's breast milk. Also, if you like it, not a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like there's so much stigma around people wanting to talk about things like this. But we're also in this culture of like, how do we create sustainability in romantic relationships? And it's like, oh, let me tell you 2 quick tips: telling the truth and talking about stuff. Like that. Those are 2 really good ways
about
to create
how maybe you
sustainability.
should use soap.
Exactly.
Me telling myself that, like, oh, when you wash things, you use soap normally, right?
And also, like, having conversations like that in relationships and knowing that it's okay. Conflict resolution, like, wild things of that nature.
But that's like when I teach my power exchange classes, where specifically to play with like dominant and submissives, of bringing up the like idea of like, you have power exchange everywhere. This is
We love hierarchy.
You should not be. This should not be brand new to you, because you've had bosses, you've had teachers, you've had, you know, for a lot of folks, parents or grandparents, or like you've had authority figures, and a lot of times these were non-consensual power exchanges that you were just a part of. So this is a very particular version that you can craft for your own consent. But this is not the idea of power exchange. Not new to you, but a lot of people approach kink in this way where it's so compartmentalized over here. And you're right. It's absolutely not.
Yeah, that's like that was going to be my next thing, is what do you think people misunderstand the most about this world? And my biggest thing with like misunderstanding in general is that they need to be separate, or to even, or that it's not like a pathway to intimacy. It's a pathway to like, you're just kinky, so you're trying to find a fulfillment in a specific way. And I say that like, that's what turned me on about the kink world in general, was seeing couples that were friends of mine that I really, really admired. And I saw their level of intimacy and care with each other. And I was like, oh, this is lovely. Like these are goals for me, just in terms of like romanticism and like how they treat each other. But I realized that like what they were doing was kinky. And it was also kinky in their everyday life. It was let's make going to the grocery store kinky. Let's make going to the dentist kinky. Let's make coming home from work after a really long day kinky. And when I saw those couples, I was like, wait, this is hot. This is the type of relationship I want. How do I do this? How do I create this? And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're like putting on masks and gags and like going to a dark black dungeon every Saturday. It means that like we're using kink as a way to figure out what each other like and to build intimacy into our relationship. And those people had been together for 10, 15 years by the time I met them. And I was like, y'all still act like y'all started dating 6 months ago. Like, this is something that when what I learned from monogamy in my life is that shit just goes away and never comes back. And you better just be okay with like whatever your relationship looks like in 10 years, because you're just lucky you have a person who's willing to stick around. Like, just be happy about it. And it was from kink that I learned like, oh, people have the type of relationships that I want. And that, I think the biggest misunderstanding is this means that you're like going to a swingers club, you're dressed in leather and latex, and that you're like hitting people with a flogger every Saturday.
Only a flogger.
Yeah, exactly. Only specifically a flogger. 50 Shades of Grey style all the time, and that like that is a misunderstanding to me.
That when I first kind of entered the community of kink and not just was like, privately playing by myself, to me it was always funny. There was two groups of kinky people that I knew. One was the first group of kinky people where they were like, yeah, we use a butt plug every other month, and that's super kinky. And I was like,
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other half of these kinky people were the people think, oh, I'm not that kinky. Like, I don't hit anybody, but we like role play as vampires every weekend, and we drink each other's blood. And I'm like, holy shit!
God.
Like, this is crazy. And they're like, no,
kinky as hell.
they're like, that's not BDSM because it's not. I'm not hitting anybody. And I'm like, you are doing the craziest fluid exchange that I've heard of in the last year, and you don't think it's kinky? No.
Yeah.
No, but this is my vampire name, and I'm
We don't have a flogger.
and I sleep in a coffin. It's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
The people who are literally like, I write my partner like fan fiction of us as vampires, and I send them a letter in the mail every month, and I'm like, that's kinkier than most people ever.
That's pretty fucking
You
kinky,
spend so much time and energy on that, more than the people who are just wearing leather and hitting each other with blocks.
Yes,
so
Let me tell you.
So true.
Or the people assuming that anal is kinky. You know?
Yeah.
It's
Oh
like-
my god, I know. Or like, or every like cis man that is like,
I'm
like
real
I want you to. I'm real kinky. I want you to dominate me. So just ride my face. Like half the time, I'm like, bro, like you don't like. If you just want to eat more pussy, like just eat pussy.
We
Like
can talk about that. Yeah.
Vanilla shit. Yeah.
I don't
It's not
like
like being a therapist, because then I'm like, let's just talk about how you can talk to your partner about how you
yeah,
want to eat.
yeah.
But
I
we just talk about how you really just want to eat pussy, and that's fine.
I just love the idea that like so many cis men feel like they need to be dominated into that for whatever reason.
Yeah, just a vanilla thing.
Yeah.
It's why they're like, pegging is super kinky, and I'm like, it's just.
That's the other one.
Yeah.
Every time I'm on like a dating app with like a dude, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, like I'm looking to dom, and then they're like, well, I don't know that I'm really into pegging, and I'm like, well, okay, like the fact that you just like went to that assumption, like, okay, like, and then at that point, I'm like, do I have the emotional labor to explain to you that like we define how I dom you, or like, but also by that time they'll be like, I don't know that I'm into pegging, and then they block me before we can even do anything else because of the assumption.
But they're super into it. The fact that that's the
Yeah.
first thing, it takes up their mind
Yeah.
space. I'll be like, no, sir.
Well, and that's the first thing that you thought about. But also, I have a theory, and I was talking to a young, fresh kinkster who's in her mid-20s about this last week, when I was talking about like the beauty of dating men over the age of 40, which I've been doing for quite a while in my life at this point, is that even whether they think they're vanilla, whether they've been, married for a long time, freshly divorced, like wherever they are in their life, they're at least the tad bit more comfortable admitting the fact that they understand the prostate and they understand the When you meet dudes in their 20s and they're like, I don't want anything near my butt, you better fuck off, I never do anything with that. And it's like, okay, call me when you're 40 and you recognize that feels really good. And like, just call me, just tell me that you don't have a lot of sexual experience without telling me you don't have a lot of sexual experience. Because this is not about me like getting some sort of pleasure about your eye. I'm trying to do you a favor, but you have no idea what that favor is. It's fine. You don't know what you don't know. Go on and be merry and call me in 15 years.
Yeah.
But it's like this idea that like, oh, there are only certain men who like things in their butt. It's like, it's fine if you, exactly. I'm like, it's fine. But it's one of those things of just like experience tells you and shows you. And it's lovely to find people with experience. And I feel like another misunderstanding is that this is all young people. It's like young people are not great at things. We know that. They're not great at politics. They're not great at voting. They're not great at doing their own dishes. They're not great at grocery shopping. And they're also not great at sex because they haven't been doing it for that long.
No.
And even if they have, they've probably been doing it terribly. And there is nothing more fun than being in your like, post 40 bliss. And this is coming from someone who's not even 40 yet, but like, as someone who's been polyamorous and has been dating people who have been like divorced and in that lull of like, I haven't dated anyone for 10 years. I don't even know what it's like to go on a date anymore. And I'm like, this is the best time of your life.
Yeah.
Like you are sexually competent. You know what you like. You have a little bit less fear. Like there is nothing more exciting than that. And the fact that we live in a culture where people feel like they have died after 40, I'm just like, this is your prime.
Yeah.
This is your prime. This is the time where you should be enjoying yourself. This is the time where you get to have the most fun. And I want people to understand that they are coming into a place of joy the older that they get in their sexual experience and in their exploration and just in their time on Earth.
There has to be a certain number of years where masturbation loses its shine, and then they have to start exploring it other ways because it's getting a little boring with themselves. Like, I mean, speaking as somebody who like has experienced it and also been with many other people who've experienced it, of being like, for some guys, of being like, there's like, hey, I just got so fucking bored with jerking off that I was like, maybe this, and I'm like, there we go. Discovered it.
Yes, get bored.
Yeah, but you can't tell that's somebody in their early 20s. They're still in that, like, jerking off is so exciting.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like, not that it isn't.
Or really selfish in their own, you know, sexual relationship where they're like, the, you know, cishet male partner is orgasming easily, but the female identifying partner is not.
Yeah.
And then a lot of women don't admit that they're not that they are or not orgasming, and then they just kind of sit on it.
Yeah, but it's because they're afraid to hurt the men's feelings.
Yeah.
And we need to stop being afraid of hurting their feelings. They're not afraid of hurting my feelings.
Like, also, like, it doesn't have to hurt your feelings just because you didn't do a job. Like, it's okay. First of all,
it's just
like,
feedback.
It's just feedback, but also, like, I think that also opens up a wider conversation that I'm very excited to talk about, like, on an episode, which is, like, what is the goal of the sexual experience? And it doesn't always have to be that everybody's coming. Like, especially the older that you get, it might not be that you're going to orgasm.
Yeah.
That might not be the thing. And if that's the goal and we just keep working towards it and it's never going to happen, then we're both going to feel like failures and it's going to feel shitty. So it's like, what is our goal of the sexual experience in general? And it's like, what's the goal? Are we both coming here? Like, what are we both orgasming? Is that what we're doing? Or are we just like doing this for a certain amount of time? Do we just want to experience something? Like, the idea of like sexual labbing in general and just experimenting with a partner and somebody trusted is also very lovely. And you have to discuss like what the goal is of this. And sometimes it really is just setting a timer and being like, well, when the timer goes off, let's figure out where we are and what's going on here. Like, some of it is just that. But this is also a great segue into the next question of how have your personal experiences shaped your approach to this community, to this podcast, to these conversations?
Well, for me, it's made me more confident of asking about what I want and what I like. Before getting into the scene, I mean, I was dating in the very, because I'm older than all of y'all, but I was dating in a very vanilla way and not orgasming at all. And sometimes they didn't even care if I orgasmed at all. You know, so I don't want to have relationships like that anymore where I'm not advocating for myself. So that has changed a lot in me throughout all these educational experiences through this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm someone that, like, you know, I'll be in public talking to my friends or like partners about this stuff. They will realize someone else is like listening and then be like, shh, you know, and I'm here because like I just want to like, I guess, like, stop being like shushed. It's one of those. It's like, no, I'm a person that's like that's out in the world, and like I'm just here, you know, like I don't want to be afraid to like talk about this in front of like other people anymore. And like that's like the way that I'm approaching this podcast. Is it's like let's bring these conversations like out of the closet, like because these are like, and this is like when I'm with like vanilla friends and partners, because it's like they want to know all the tea because their lives are quite like oppressed and boring. But at the same time, like when I'm, you know, out to dinner with you and you like ask me about it, then you're like shushing me when the waiter comes over. Like I just want to be like I'm really unapologetic.
So with Four Femmes and the structure of this podcast, the great thing about it is that we have 4 different hosts. We have episodes that we're going to be all in together and chatting together in different groups as well. But we also are going to be bringing on guests, and we have our own unique ways of leading our own interviews with different people. So what do you all feel is going to make our episodes different from one another?
Lived in experiences, you know, also, you know, well, I guess there's not really much more to add on to just lived in experiences. Like, my experiences are different than yours, different than yours. So, like, you're just coming to the table with what we already have.
And I think we have a very good diverse mix of different kinks that we are interested in.
Oh, God.
And also, like, also what roles we like to play within that kind of kink. And then also, even outside of kink, of like, correct, of like some of us are parents, some are not. We all have different jobs, and we've grown up in different places. You and I are both like people of color. Like it's going to be very good because there's going to be a common threads between like a lot of the conversations we have, but also a lot of like differences as well. And it's important for people to hear all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we also just have different relationships with the people that we're going to interview. So I think that over the span of time, I'm sure that we'll have guests on different times and multiple times with different ones of us. And I think that each episode is just going to be super organic in how we choose to talk to people. And we all have different like relationships so it might look different with each of us, which I think is really cool. And the things that we want to share are so different too.
And we might be interviewing each other again. We're going to start that for our audience to get to know us individually, but then we might have another round of like, hey, this happened, and we're going to chit chat about that. Like, because Danny and I have talked about our platonic kink relationship. Platonic.
That's very intimate.
Yeah. But there's
on
not
like
a lot
both
of
physical and emotional levels.
Yeah,
so it's like
But there's not a lot of talk about platonic play partners in the community and how that is a very successful relationship and an educational relationship. So
and like the best part of us being hosts that are like in the lifestyle is that like we are living it and constantly evolving. So like what I might have like an episode on, like maybe months later I'll have learned something, or maybe I messed something up, maybe I made a mistake and we need to like discuss, we need to like so we'll see. Yeah.
And then there's also things like I do not feel like I want to be interviewed a topic that I am not versed in any respect. So an example of that would be there's probably going to be some conversations about potentially the tantra community on this podcast. I cannot interview. I cannot be interviewed. It is something that I have no experience with. But the thing is, there's other people here who can talk about that, and I believe it's an important thing that we do talk about. I just can't. Right? And so the thing is that we all have those things that we feel we competent to speak on, and then we don't, right? So the fact that there's 4 of us means that we can cover more ground from this perspective.
So, okay, to wrap up this introduction episode, one last question I have is, what do you all hope listeners leave with?
Feeling okay to question. Feeling okay to seek what they want. Feeling like they're not alone.
I hope that they learn a little something. I don't believe like every episode I have, you're going to be learning the entire episode. That's not at all realistic. My hope is that from the episodes that I have, there was one thing that stuck out to you, being like, hey, didn't know that weird thing. And then also, it was entertaining. To be perfectly honest, I really hope it's entertaining for people when they're on their commute or at the gym or on the toilet. And, I want to be there for you and time. Because a little part of me is kind of like, look, there's a gazillion podcasts out there.
Yeah.
It's actually very flattering to me that people would be like, hey, I'm going to spend my time listening to these people. So I really hope that our podcast is entertaining, which I believe it's us.
Yeah.
So it will be. So yeah, I hope they get a little laugh and like a little tidbit of like, oh, didn't know that.
I mean, I was really just gonna like piggyback off you, just as an entertainer. Like, I just want to entertain.
Yeah.
Like, if you like, as a theater kid, like I just want to entertain, and however that means to you, like as long as it's entertaining to you, and it's great if you learn something, But like at bare minimum, like I want to make you laugh. Like, I just want to make you laugh because like life and work is hard, So like when you're having a day at the office and you're eating lunch in your car and crying, like some people I know do. I hope to like I hope that like I can give somebody enough energy to just keep going, whatever that means.
But then honestly, is the easiest way to hear hard things is through laughter and story, and that's, I think, how a lot of people learn the best, because that lesson goes down much easier that way.
Yeah. A spoonful of sugar. Yes. Well,
Did we do it?
yeah, we did it. We did our first intro episode, and
Oh my gosh! Congratulations.
Yay! Thank y'all for taking this journey together.